Hello, my name is Steve Fiorelli, and I'm a solutions architect with Barracuda Networks. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about a question I receive from time to time, which is, what is the difference between an IPS and a WAF? And sometimes rather than an IPS, you might see this as an IDS. So you'll see an IDS or IPS. An IDS is an intrusion detection system. An IPS is an intrusion prevention system. Main difference being that an IDS detects, whereas an IPS detects, but also can stop the attacks from taking place as well. And a WAF, that is going to be a web application firewall. And sometimes nowadays you'll see WAF is deployed as a WAF as a service. So rather than on a VM or hardware, it'll actually be delivered via a SaaS type of solution. Okay, so starting out, when we talk about IDS and IPS, traditionally, these types of solutions came in the form factor of dedicated appliances. Nowadays, that's not so much the case. Typically, that functionality is going to be included into modern firewalls. And to help explain the difference between these two today, I'm actually going to switch over to Barracuda's CloudGen firewall to help take a look at some IDS IPS hits as I explain this. So I'm right now logged into Firewall admin, which is allowing me to look at the network traffic taking place on my Barracuda firewall. And I can see when I switch into the history section that I have a whole bunch of different traffic types, different sources, different destinations coming to and from different sources. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my threat scan tab, which is going to give me a listing of my IPS hits. And I can see here that for my network traffic that's traversing my network, that there are some alerts here that IPS hits have taken place. So in this case, I can see that I have a number of different server systems, and my IPS is detecting when an attack is taking place. And the way that it's doing this is because an IDS IPS works in line inspecting traffic. So as all of the communication is taking place that's going through my firewall, I am inspecting that traffic. I'm looking from the lower layers, such as layer 2 up to layer 7, the application layer, taking a look at that traffic. And you might have heard the concept of signatures, and that's kind of how an IPS works. Basically, what a signature is, think of it like a pattern, that when that pattern is seen, it indicates that a bad guy is trying to exploit some sort of vulnerability. So in this case, if I take a look at one of my hits here, one of my IPS hits here, I can see that it actually indicates that there's a CVE corresponding to this IPS hit that took place. And if I switch over to my browser and I take a look at the CVE, I see that this is actually about a vulnerability for Windows RDP. It's a rather old vulnerability, but my IPS was able to detect that this series of network traffic was taking place, which indicated that an attacker, and it could be automated or it could be manual, was trying to exploit one of these vulnerabilities against my RDP server. And I can actually see that this is hitting my rule that allows traffic to my RDP server. So this looks legitimate to me. Okay, so that's basically what you were going to see with an IDS IPS. It's going to cover your different application types, and especially you're going to see this, you're going to want to have an IDS IPS in place inspecting your traffic to and from the internet as kind of the most important thing that an IDS IPS looks at. Now what we're going to be looking at is Barracuda's WAF as a service to help explain the difference from what we're looking at here versus a WAF. Okay, so switching over to the dashboard of the Barracuda WAF as a service, I'm going to jump into the dashboard of one of my configured applications. And so just starting out, this is focused on traffic from the internet that is visiting my website. And architecturally, with a WAF or a WAF as a service like we're looking at here, this is actually deployed as a reverse proxy. So we are proxying the traffic from the client to the actual service, and we're in the middle of it inspecting it for attacks against our website. Also, this is going to be actually looking inside of the encrypted TLS traffic that's taken place. When we look at the logs specifically for WAF as a service, we are going to notice that these are specific to application vulnerabilities. So if I come in here into my logs and I go to firewall logs, I can see that I have a listing of the different attacks against my website. And the difference here is that these are only going to be focused on my website, my vulnerabilities on that could be on my website that an attacker is trying to exploit. In this case, if I take a look at my first entry here at the details, I can see that I had a client based in the United States. Here's their IP address, their user agent. They were trying to access my website, but they were actually included an attack in their web traffic. And I can see that they actually, in the details here, they attempted a SQL injection attack against my website. And so with the WAF as a service, it was able to detect, and it can also block out this type of attack. Also with a WAF and a WAF as a service, you can specify a specific follow-up action. So whether you just want to block the traffic, that's great. You can also, in the future, if the same client is connected, you could include CAPTCHAs to make sure they're a real person and not a bot. You could lock them out of the website for a set period of time. And of course, there's other customization with a WAF and a WAF as a service as well. So you can actually tailor the protection for your website very specifically with a WAF and a WAF as a service. The other type of logs we'll take a look at here is if I go into bot protection into my dashboard, the WAF and WAF as a service is able to protect your website and give you visibility into bots that are visiting your website. And you'll notice here in my bot dashboard, I can see that I have some legitimate humans that are visiting my website, but I also have bots, and some of these are good bots and some of them are bad bots. And I have a breakdown in terms of the percentage of the different visitors to my website. And if I click into the bot protection specifically, I can see the origin of these different bots, the way that they're categorized. I can even flip over to the bot session logs, and this is going to give me visibility into each specific bot that is visiting and crawling my website. So again, this is application level. This is something that is happening inside of the TLS session from the client to my website, and the WAF and WAF as a service is able to not only protect you against the attacks, but also give you that visibility. Okay, so in conclusion, the IDS, IPS, and WAF as a service, they do have separate purposes. The IDS, IPS is great for looking at network traffic as it flows through your network, especially when that traffic is going to and from the internet. Whereas the WAF and WAF as a service is specifically designed to protect your website and the assets behind your website. So think about, for example, the OWASP top 10, the top 10 type of risks and threats you can face to your website. These are the type of thing that a WAF and WAF as a service is going to protect against in a very tailored fashion that an IDS and IPS is not designed to protect against. If you'd like to try out any of the functionality talked about in the session today, please reach out, as Barracuda does offer free trials on the different products in the portfolio. If you have any questions, please reach out to your Barracuda representative, and we would be happy to answer them. Thank you.